Okay, I normally go into depth on most of my videos. In fact, sometimes I draw them out a little far too long. This time I'm just going to ask you to watch a video, and hopefully you've seen my other videos on sacred geometry. In fact, if you haven't, you may want to go to my channel and just type in sacred geometry, and it should pull up 12 to 14 videos, and you can look through a few of those and watch them. It's pretty important. It's something that I found out years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, let's see what they say about this. It's probably BS. And because I already knew a little bit about it, and whenever I started getting into it deeper, it became another rabbit hole attached to another one, attached to another one, and really is quite extensive. And it shows you what people knew in ancient times and something that we've pretty much forgotten in this modern day. But in that process, it shows you some things that are reality on how they actually knew how far away the planets were, distance, time, things like that. You know, the Sumerians invented the time scale that we use today based on base 6. And so you have a morning and an evening and an early night and a late night, and that's how you get to 24 hours. And their timing was all based on base 6 technology and their mathematics too, which if you look up the Plimpton 322 tablet, I believe is the number on it, will show you what these people have found, that they had ancient trigonometry and things that people aren't usually willing to talk about too much, but it's for sure known. In fact, if you watch the correct video on that, or the video presentation I did on it, you'll see these people that are professional mathematicians who got a hold of a couple of tablets that supposedly were just giving out weird numbers, and they thought it was for some type of tabulation or keeping track of crops and things like that. And whenever they looked at it, they saw sequences and numbers, and then they thought, well, that must be something to do with trigonometry. And they found out it to be true. And in another one of the tablets in that group, which were just thrown in a box back in ancient times, whenever people got a hold of these tablets, as being something that was like record keeping. And somebody had enough sense to give this on to these mathematicians and have them take a look at it, and they actually, with due diligence, realized what it was all about. And so it shows you things like that. But I've done a recent short also that shows that the ancient Egyptians knew about pi, and they'd really just do an easy tabulation on it as 22 divided by 7, giving you some number that is extremely close to pi. But they also knew the real relation of pi. And this can easily be done with a length of string, and it doesn't matter how long it is, as long as you've cut it into sections. And then you look at how much that section is. But then you have to actually break it down into what actual percentage it was. And that shows you that they had advanced mathematics. And this dates back to the earliest of dynasties. In fact, the Great Pyramid is built on it. Now, this video that I'm talking about is on the channel of YouTube by Robert Edward Grant. And the name of the video here is Mind-Blowing New Discoveries Beneath the Khafre Pyramid. And it also mentions Dr. Manu Sefza. Well, this guy is talking to Robert Edward Grant about this, and in the process, it's about a 3-hour video. So you can imagine how I go on about things and cut in and talk about things. And I could turn it into a 5-part series of over an hour each and so on like that. And I thought about doing that. I thought about cutting it in parts, explaining it to you a little bit, and then going into a next part that's about this, that, and the other thing, you know, and sacred geometry and so on. But I would like for you to just watch it yourself, and after they say something important and then show you something important, you might want to pause the video for a minute. You might want to go back 4 or 5 minutes and listen one more time to what they say and what they show you. because they show that there were depictions in the Great Pyramid where we're always taught that they didn't have any hieroglyphics or anything whatsoever in there. But if you'll look at this, they had astrotheology all over the inside of the Great Pyramid. It can show you pictures and faces and things that connect with that. In fact, later in the video, because he mentions it a couple of times, he mentions about Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of the Last Supper and how it was shown. And you can look at one of my old videos where I show this same thing, where I zoom in on parts of it and I go, look, this is showing you the Orion connection, and there looks like there's a face here. And I say, well, that could be just pareidolia, right? Pareidolia is where you seem to find a puppy or a cloud or a face in the swirls of rocks, or the burning on a piece of toast, or in the clouds, or things like that. But in that process, I'm like, well, there's a few too many things that are connections here. And Da Vinci didn't just screw around here. And so it's showing you that he had something going on whenever he did. Well, this guy's gone into depth on that, and he shows you pictures that are hidden inside of the painting of the Last Supper. But he also shows in ancient Egyptian pyramids how there is depictions where you never thought there were at all, and what it has connections to, and how it connects back to a time that seems about 12,800 years ago. And that is crazy because that hooks up with the Younger Dryas events. So this is quite unique experience to listen to them talk about this. And I thought about doing it and cutting in like I do and so on and trying to explain it further. But I thought it would be best probably if we were to look at it on your own and then come back maybe and say something about what you saw. I do plan on doing audio clips and or video clips and pictures and so on of their revelations that they go through on this, and do it that in a certain video style here later. Once I get all the equipment being able to do so better. Right now I think I might be able to pull it off with what I've got going on now, but it would be better if I could pull it off a little bit more fancy. But anyhow, try to look up Robert Edward Grant. And I did a recent short on the new findings under the Khafre pyramid they've done with that SAR technology, where they're actually doing it's not the same thing, but like a ground penetrating radar, and then it shows you there are some things below the Khafre pyramid where they've done the muon testing and stuff in the Great Pyramid and found another area that looks like the Great or Grand Gallery, and it's up above it again. But as this man shows you that, he also mentions that Da Vinci had actually gone to Egypt for a few years, and he got hooked up with some people that knew what the hell they were talking about, and he put two and two together and came up with something quite remarkable. And it shows you sacred geometry and shapes and things that he did, where people have said, I realize that he uses the Fibonacci sequence to make Mona Lisa and all these other paintings and things like that. But this shows you why. And it also shows you the how it's done, and for what reason, and what connections it has. And it really shows you something quite important. And people that are attached to me and like the things that I've been able to show you over the last 6 years here, or 7 now, if you like that type of stuff, you're going to like this. This is a professional and a good researcher who does have a doctorate, but not in Egyptology. But he's become quite interested in it, and he makes quite a bit of connections too. And they mention other people that have these connections in the video and stuff, so on. So look up Robert Edward Grant, and the name of the video again is Mind-Blowing New Discoveries Beneath the Khafre Pyramid. And if you find that, you should find these guys sitting around and having a chat. but in doing so, it just keeps expounding more and more. And we got to a certain point in that, and I said, is this part pareidolia or what? And lo and behold, as I was listening to him, I found that, no, wait, hold on a minute. This just made a connection that I've talked about before from someone else a long time ago. And, oh my God, then there was another one. Then there was another one. And I said, stop. Let's go back about 8 minutes here and listen to the whole thing again. And I started to go through it again, and I was like, wow, okay, what? Seriously? There's a connection that I didn't know anything about. Then after I go through a couple that I did know about and have mentioned before in a couple of my videos, all of a sudden he shows a few more connections and things. And not that I can agree with 100% of what he says. I would think it would probably be somewhere in the 70 to 90% here. And there may be a little bit of false connections going on. But at the same time, I can only say that because I need to be shown it. Like if I could talk to this guy for a while and ask him a few questions as he showed these things, rather than talking to someone who seems like he already knows. So again, it'll go right over your head if you're not familiar with sacred geometry, numbers, angles, things like that they talk about. But if you have that under your belt in any way, and then you've had time to absorb it, then watching this video is going to show you something that is quite incredible about the ancient pyramids. Now, of course, is when I was a kid, they were just like, oh, they just stacked up some rocks in the shape of a pyramid. And then, well, how'd they do it? And, well, we don't know yet. We really don't know. And that has drawn me on a quest to find out, well, what do we know? What do we not know? What understanding can we get as we know more and more? And it's crazy what you're shown on videos about this versus what you learn from these experts quite often. And it's like, why don't they ever mention any of this? Is it because it starts to sound like aliens and advanced cultures before there were supposed to be any? Because, you know, when I was a kid, or even well before and all the way back, people were trying to believe in this Bible theory of the earth being only 6,000 years old and all of these things that everybody knows aren't true. I mean, yeah, we know about dinosaurs and everything now, and the length of the time of the universe itself and our solar system and so on. So this is just mythology that's taken into it. But as I got deep into it, I kept finding these things about sacred geometry, certain numbers that are mentioned in there and attached to something. Why did they use that sacred geometry number in this part? He doesn't go into all of that. I do in some of my earlier videos. But this is one that'll take you to the next level. And I don't want to just sit and ramble and not show you anything. But I think in this case, like I did recently with another video on the Hindu beliefs and this lady who had done a collection on it, and I go, well, I could cut in and out on that and talk, but I don't think I really need to. They could watch this and they'd get an understanding. Well, in this case, you'd get an understanding, and if you don't know, it'll sometimes go over your head, but try to listen through this thing and see what they all say. And you may even want to stop it and let me go back about 20 minutes and listen to this again right here, and let me look at the pictures and everything. Do I see that? Because I was looking at it off my phone, and then I turned around and threw my phone on my big screen TV, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I see it now. Wow. So have they manipulated this in any way? No, it's just a shot. So in the marble that has been cleaved thinly and coated the Queen's Chamber and King's Chamber there, it shows you that there are pictures on the wall that nobody ever knows about and nobody's willing to show you. But they're pictures, and it looks a bit like pareidolia, but once they show you 4, 5, 6, 8, 15, 20 things, it's about time you start believing in it. And they do make the mention of the DaVinci's photo or paintings and stuff, and then he shows you some connections in that and connections that go with the Great Pyramid. And they also go into pictures of the Great Pyramid DaVinci drew, which strangely looks a lot like what they have shown is up under the Khafre pyramid at this time. And it may show you something that you wouldn't know anything about unless you got in the right group of people and you got to know about these things that you never knew. So I'd like for you to look it up again. This is Robert Edward Grant, Mind-Blowing New Discoveries Beneath the Khafre Pyramid. But they go into a lot of things that are more than that and make a lot of connections. And I'm actually going to watch it again for the fourth time now and go through it again and probably start recording little clips and putting some pieces of it out too. But this goes along with all the sacred geometry that I've talked about before and shown you connections. And they make a few connections that I never knew. And for me, whenever something like that happens, it gets me very excited, if you can't tell, because it's like, wow, okay, I was sitting here in the middle of this thing, and now I feel like I was all in the Kool-Aid and didn't even know the flavor until somebody says, this is red punch, fruit punch flavor. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay, now I'm making other connections. And then they show you a couple of other things, and you're like, oh, wow. Okay, now I've made connections with stuff with that before. Therefore, hold on a minute. This is looking very conspicuous here. And it shows you that these ancient Egyptians, these blue-eyed Caucasians from the pre-dynastic all the way through, knew a lot more than anybody ever gives credit for. It's a whole nother step of things that never get shown or talked about. Take a look at it, if you will. Peace.